The rain pounded New York City's Lower East Side, turning the streets into rivers of neon and grime. Jamie Torres, 23, stood under a flickering streetlight, his sketchbook soaked, his heart heavier than the storm. He'd just been evicted from his tiny studio apartment, his dreams of art school drowning in debt and rejection. Jamie clutched his worn jacket tighter, his breath visible in the chilly October air. He was no stranger to struggle. Coming out at 16 in a conservative upstate town had cost him his family's love, and the city hadn't been much kinder. But tonight, something snapped. The weight of loneliness and failure felt like it might crush him. He trudged toward a dimly lit diner, its neon sign buzzing like a promise of warmth. Inside, the smell of coffee and fried onions wrapped around him like a hug he hadn't felt in years. Jamie slid into a booth, his damp sketchbook thudding onto the table. He had $12. 47 left, enough for a burger, maybe some fries. As he scanned the menu, his eyes caught a figure slumped in the corner booth. A man, maybe in his 50s, with a weathered face and clothes that looked like they'd seen better decades. His hands trembled as he stared at an empty coffee cup, his eyes hollow with something deeper than hunger. Jamie's heart tugged. He knew that look: desperation, the kind that clings to you when the world turns its back. He'd felt it every time he faced a "we regret to inform you" letter from art grants or galleries. Without thinking, he waved the waitress over. "Can you get that guy a burger and fries? Whatever's good. I'll pay." The waitress, a woman with tired eyes and a kind smile, nodded. "You sure, kid? You don't look like you're swimming in cash yourself." Jamie forced a grin. "I've got enough to share." He didn't. Not really. But the man's hollow gaze wouldn't let him look away. The food arrived at the stranger's table, and his head snapped up, confusion etching deeper lines into his face. He looked over at Jamie, who offered a small wave, his cheeks flushing. The man hesitated, then nodded back, a flicker of something gratitude, maybe crossing his features before he dug into the meal like it was his first in days. Jamie returned to his sketchbook, doodling absent-mindedly, his mind racing. Why had he done that? He couldn't afford it. Not when he was one bad day from sleeping on the street himself. But there was something about the act, small as it was, that felt like defiance against the world's cruelty. The diner's bell jingled as the stranger stood, his meal finished. He walked over to Jamie's booth, his steps slow but deliberate. Close, Jamie noticed the man's sharp cheekbones and piercing blue eyes, like he'd once been someone who commanded rooms. "Why'd you do that?" the man asked, his voice low, almost accusing. Jamie shrugged, his pencil pausing mid-stroke. "You looked like you needed it more than I needed the $10. The man studied him, his gaze intense, like he was peeling back layers Jamie didn't even know he had. Most people don't notice, or they don't care. He extended a hand, surprisingly steady now. "Ethan." "Jamie," he replied, shaking it. Ethan's grip was firm, his hand calloused but warm. "You're an artist," Ethan said, glancing at the sketchbook. It wasn't a question. Jamie's open page showed a half-finished drawing of the diner, all sharp lines and soft shadows, capturing the mood of the rain-soaked night. "Trying to be," Jamie muttered, his voice tinged with bitterness. "Not like anyone's buying." Ethan's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Keep at it." The world's got a way of surprising you. He turned to leave, then paused. Thanks for the meal, Jamie. I won't forget it. As Ethan disappeared into the rain, Jamie felt a strange warmth in his chest, like he'd done something that mattered, even if he couldn't explain why. He paid his bill $8.22 left now and stepped back into the storm, unaware that this small act of kindness had just set his life on a collision course with destiny. The next morning, Jamie woke on a friend's couch in Brooklyn, the ache of last night's choices lingering. He checked his phone. No new emails. No missed calls. Just a reminder that rent was overdue. He dragged himself to a coffee shop job he hated, serving overpriced lattes to people who barely looked at him. But as he wiped down counters, his mind kept drifting to Ethan, those piercing eyes, that cryptic parting line. Who was he? Just another drifter, or something more? By noon, Jamie's shift ended, and he headed to Washington Square Park, his sketchbook under his arm. The park was alive with buskers, students, and tourists, a chaotic symphony of New York's pulse. He found a bench and started drawing, losing himself in the lines of a street performer's guitar, the curve of a child's laughter. Art was his escape, his rebellion against a world that told him he wasn't enough, not talented enough, not straight enough, not rich enough. As he sketched, a shadow fell over his page. He looked up to see a woman in a tailored blazer, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun. Jamie Torres, she asked, her tone clipped but not unkind. Yeah. Jamie's stomach twisted. Had he forgotten to pay a bill? Was he in trouble? I'm Claire Daniels, with Caldwell Enterprises, she said, handing him a business card. The name meant nothing to him, but the card's weight and embossed gold logo screamed money. Mr. Caldwell would like to meet with you. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. at our office in Midtown. Jamie blinked, confused. Caldwell. I don't know any. Ethan Caldwell, she clarified, her eyes softening slightly. He was impressed by you last night. Jamie's heart skipped. The stranger from the diner. Impressed. I just bought him a burger. Claire's smile was tight, professional. Mr. Caldwell values certain qualities. He sees potential where others don't. Be there tomorrow, Mr. Torres. Don't be late. She walked away, leaving Jamie staring at the card, his mind reeling. Ethan Caldwell. A name that carried weight, though he didn't know why yet. He pulled out his phone and Googled Ethan Caldwell, New York. The results hit like a freight train. Ethan Caldwell, reclusive tech mogul, founder of Caldwell Enterprises, net worth $1.2 billion. Articles described a man who'd vanished from public life years ago, haunted by personal tragedy, rarely seen outside elite circles. Jamie's hands shook. The man he'd fed, the man he'd assumed was homeless, was a millionaire. A billionaire. His act of kindness, born of instinct, had caught the eye of someone who could change everything. But why? What did Ethan want with him? That night, Jamie barely slept, his mind caught between hope and dread. He wasn't just a broke artist anymore. He was a broke artist with a meeting that could rewrite his future. As he tossed and turned, he couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan's piercing gaze had seen something in him, something even Jamie didn't know was there. The Midtown office of Caldwell Enterprises gleamed like a fortress of glass and steel, its towering presence dwarfing Jamie as he stepped off the subway. He'd borrowed a too-tight blazer from his friend Marcus, the sleeves pinching his wrists, and his sneakers felt painfully out of place against the polished marble lobby. His heart pounded as he clutched Claire's business card, the only thing anchoring him to this surreal moment. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor was silent, save for the soft hum of machinery and Jamie's uneven breathing. He didn't belong here, not in a world of tailored suits and million-dollar views. But Ethan's words from the diner echoed in his mind. The world's got a way of surprising you. Jamie hoped that was true, because right now, he felt like a fraud walking into a lion's den. Claire met him at the reception desk, her smile as crisp as her blazer. "Mr. Caldwell's waiting," she said, leading him down a hallway lined with abstract art, bold, chaotic pieces that reminded Jamie of his own sketches. He wondered if Ethan had chosen them himself. The office door opened to a sprawling room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Ethan stood by the glass, his back to Jamie, no longer the weathered stranger from the diner. He wore a tailored navy suit, his silver hair neatly combed, but those piercing blue eyes were unmistakable when he turned. "Jamie," he said, his voice warm but measured. "Thank you for coming." Jamie nodded, his throat dry. "I didn't expect this. Any of this." Ethan gestured to a leather chair. "Sit. We have a lot to discuss." As Jamie sank into the chair, Ethan sat across from him, his gaze as intense as it had been in the diner. "Last night, you did something most people wouldn't. You saw Menet the myth, not the money, just a man who needed a meal. That's rare." Jamie shifted, uncomfortable. "I didn't know who you were. I've been there. Hungry. Alone. Couldn't not help." Ethan leaned back, his fingers steepled. "That's exactly why you're here. I don't trust easily, Jamie. The world I live in, people want things. Favors. Money. Power. But you gave without asking for anything in return. That's not just kindness. It's character." Jamie's cheeks burned. He wasn't used to praise, especially not from someone like Ethan. "I don't know what you want from me," he admitted. "I'm nobody. I'm just a guy who draws and barely pays his bills." Ethan's lips curved into a faint smile. "You're an artist. I saw your sketchbook. You have a gift, and you're wasting it serving coffee and dodging landlords." Jamie's defenses flared. "You don't know me. I've been trying galleries, grants, all of it. No one cares about my work." "Then make them care," Ethan said, his tone sharp but not unkind. "I'm offering you a chance. I want to fund your art studio space, materials, a solo exhibition at a gallery I own. No strings, no catch. Just a chance to show the world what you can do." Jamie's breath caught. It sounded too good to be true, like a fairy tale for a kid who'd stopped believing in them. "Why me? You don't even know if I'm any good." Ethan stood and walked to a shelf, pulling out a sleek tablet. He tapped the screen and handed it to Jamie. It showed a photo of one of Jamie's street murals, a vibrant, sprawling piece he'd painted on a Brooklyn wall last summer, a tribute to the city's misfits and dreamers. "I had Claire do some digging," Ethan said. "This is yours, isn't it? It's extraordinary." Jamie stared at the image, his throat tight. He'd painted that mural in a haze of anger and hope, never expecting anyone to notice. "Yeah," he whispered. "That's mine." "I don't invest in people who aren't worth it," Ethan said. "And I'm rarely wrong." The rest of the meeting blurred details about a studio in Soho, a budget for supplies, a timeline for the exhibition. Jamie nodded along, his mind spinning. When he left the office, the city felt different, like it was holding its breath, waiting for him to take this leap. But doubt crept in as he rode the subway home. What if he failed? What if Ethan's faith in him was misplaced? And why was Ethan, a man who could buy half of Manhattan, investing in a nobody like him? The articles he'd read mentioned Ethan's reclusiveness, his wife's death a decade ago, his retreat from the spotlight. Was this offer really about Jamie's art? Or was Ethan chasing something else? Redemption, purpose, connection. That evening, Jamie met his best friend, Marcus, at a dive bar in Williamsburg. Marcus, a drag performer with a wicked grin and a heart bigger than his sequined gowns, listened as Jamie spilled the story. "A billionaire wants to bankroll your art. Honey, that's the gay Cinderella story we all dream of," Marcus teased, sipping his vodka soda. "It's not like that," Jamie said, though his cheeks flushed. "He's intense. Like he sees right through me. It's weird." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Weird or hot?" Jamie laughed, shoving him. "He's old enough to be my dad, Marcus. And I'm not his type. He's just, I don't know, lonely, maybe. Lonely billionaire with a heart of gold. Be careful, Jamie. That's how you end up in a rom-com or a true crime podcast." Jamie rolled his eyes, but Marcus's words stuck. Ethan's interest felt personal, not just professional. There was a spark in their diner encounter, a connection Jamie couldn't name. He wasn't naive, he knew the world didn't hand out free lunches or free studios. But something about Ethan's belief in him felt real, like a lifeline he couldn't afford to ignore. Over the next week, Jamie threw himself into his art. The Soho studio Ethan provided was a dream-high ceilings, natural light, shelves stocked with paints and canvases. Jamie painted like his life depended on it, pouring years of pain and hope into every stroke. He painted his childhood's small-town rejection, his mother's cold silence after he came out. He painted New York's chaos, its beauty, its cruelty. And, without realizing it, he painted Ethan the stranger in the diner, a figure of mystery and quiet strength. One evening, as Jamie worked late, Ethan visited the studio unannounced. He stood in the doorway, watching Jamie paint, his presence both comforting and unnerving. "You're different when you work," Ethan said, his voice soft. "Like you're telling the world who you are." Jamie set down his brush, his heart racing. "I'm just trying to make something real." Ethan stepped closer, his eyes tracing the canvas, a bold, abstract piece of two figures under a streetlight, their silhouettes blurred by rain. "This is us, isn't it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jamie froze, caught off guard. I didn't mean it like that." But Ethan's gaze held his, steady and searching. "Maybe you did. Maybe you saw something I've been trying to hide for years." The air between them crackled, heavy with unspoken questions. Jamie's pulse thundered, not just from the offer, the studio, the future but from Ethan himself. Was this just gratitude, or something deeper? And if it was, could Jamie, a broke artist with nothing to offer, dare to feel something for a man like Ethan Caldwell? The studio became Jamie's sanctuary, a place where time blurred and the world's noise faded. He painted through nights, his hands stained with color, his heart spilling onto each canvas. But Ethan's visit lingered like a ghost. His words, "Maybe you saw something I've been trying to hide," echoing in Jamie's mind, stirring feelings he wasn't ready to name. By mid-November, the exhibition was 3 weeks away, and the pressure was suffocating. Ethan's gallery, a sleek space in Chelsea, was one of the city's most prestigious, and Jamie felt like an imposter every time he imagined his work on its walls. He'd never shown more than a few pieces at local cafes, and now he was preparing for a solo show bankrolled by a billionaire. Doubt gnawed at him. What if the critics tore him apart? What if Ethan realized he'd bet on the wrong artist? Ethan's visits grew more frequent, always unannounced, always at odd hours. He'd stand quietly, watching Jamie work, offering small comments that cut straight to the heart of each piece. "This one feels like loss," he'd say, pointing to a canvas of jagged reds and blacks. Or, "This is hope, isn't it?" About a softer piece in blues and golds. Jamie hated how Ethan saw through him, but he craved it too, the validation, the connection. One night, as snow dusted the city, Ethan arrived with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "You need a break," he said, setting them on a paint-splattered table. "You're burning out." Jamie wiped his hands on his jeans, exhaustion tugging at his bones. "I can't stop. This show, it's everything. If I screw it up, I'm done." Ethan poured the wine, his movements deliberate. "You won't screw it up. You're too stubborn for that." Jamie laughed, the sound raw and tired. "You don't know that. You're betting a lot on a kid you met in a diner." Ethan handed him a glass, their fingers brushing for a moment too long. "I'm not betting on a kid. I'm betting on you, Jamie. There's a difference." The words hit hard, and Jamie took a sip to hide his flush. The wine was smooth, expensive, nothing like the cheap stuff he and Marcus split at the bar. He glanced at Ethan, who was staring out the studio's window at the snow falling over Soho. In the soft light, Ethan looked younger, less guarded, but the weight of his past clung to him like the shadows on the walls. "Why are you doing this?" Jamie asked, the question slipping out before he could stop it. "You could fund any artist. Why me?" Ethan turned, his blue eyes catching the light. "Because you remind me of someone I used to be. Someone who believed in something bigger than himself. Before the world, complicated things." Jamie frowned, sensing a story behind the words. The articles he'd read mentioned Ethan's wife, Lily, who died in a car accident 10 years ago. They'd been college sweethearts, built Caldwell Enterprises together. But after her death, Ethan had retreated, leaving the company to run itself while he faded into obscurity. Was that what he was hiding? Grief? Or something more? Complicated how? Jamie pressed, his voice soft but insistent. Ethan hesitated, then sat across from him, the wine glass cradled in his hands. "I used to think I could change the world. Lily and we built something from nothing, created tech that connected people, made lives better. But when she died, I lost my way. I stopped believing in everything. Until you. Jamie's heart stuttered. Me. I'm nobody. You're not, Ethan said fiercely. You gave me a meal when you had nothing to spare. You saw me when no one else did. That's not nothing, Jamie. That's everything. The room felt smaller. The air charged. Jamie wanted to look away, but Ethan's gaze held him, raw and unguarded. He saw the man behind the money, the loneliness, the longing, and it mirrored his own. He'd spent years hiding who he was, first from his family, then from a city that didn't care. But with Ethan, he felt seen, not just as an artist, but as himself. I don't know what this is, Jamie admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. You and me. Confusing. Ethan's expression softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through. It's confusing for me too. I'm not good at this connecting, letting people in. But you make me want to try. The words hung between them, heavy with possibility. Jamie's pulse raced, torn between fear and something warmer, something dangerous. He'd never let himself hope for love, not when survival took all his energy. But Ethan wasn't just a mentor, not just a benefactor. There was something real here, fragile and unspoken, and it terrified him as much as it thrilled him. The moment broke when Ethan stood, setting down his glass. Get some rest, Jamie. The show's going to be incredible. I believe in you. He left before Jamie could respond, the studio door clicking shut behind him. Jamie sat there, the wine bitter on his tongue, his mind a storm of questions. Was he falling for Ethan? Could he trust this feeling? Or was it just gratitude twisted into something more? And what did Ethan want, a friend? Protégé? Or something neither of them was ready to name? The days blurred as the exhibition loomed. Jamie's paintings took shape, each one a piece of his soul, his coming out, his rejection, his love for a city that both broke and built him. Marcus stopped by the studio, his drag heels clicking on the hardwood, and gasped at the work. Baby, this is your heart on a canvas, he said, his eyes misty. You're going to kill it. But Jamie's nerves only grew. The art world was brutal, and he was an unknown, a queer kid from nowhere with no credentials. What if the critics saw through him? What if Ethan's faith was a mistake? The night before the show, Jamie couldn't sleep. He wandered the studio, staring at his paintings, each one a risk, a confession. His phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. You're ready. Trust yourself. Simple words, but they steadied him, like a hand on his shoulder. As dawn broke, Jamie stood at the studio window, watching the city wake. He thought of Ethan, of the diner, of the impossible chance he'd been given. Whatever this was, art, connection, maybe love, it was his to seize. Tomorrow, he'd step into the spotlight, not just for himself, but for the boy who'd offered a stranger a meal and found a future he never dared to dream. The Chelsea Gallery buzzed with anticipation, its white walls glowing under soft lights, Jamie's paintings commanding every inch of space. The crowd was a mix of art critics in sharp blazers, hipsters with ironic glasses, and wealthy collectors whispering about investments. Jamie stood near the entrance, his palms sweaty, his borrowed tie too tight. He felt like an outsider in his own show, every glance from the crowd a judgment waiting to land. Ethan had insisted on keeping the opening low-key grand speeches, Just Jamie's work speaking for itself. But Jamie felt Ethan's presence across the room, mingling with guests, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the worn coat from that rainy night. Every time their eyes met, Jamie's stomach flipped, a mix of gratitude and something deeper, something he still couldn't name. Marcus was there, sans drag but still stealing attention in a vibrant purple jacket. "You're a star, Jamie," he whispered, squeezing his arm. "Look at these people eating up your work. You did this." Jamie forced a smile, but his nerves were electric. The critics were circling, their notebooks out, their murmurs too soft to decipher. His paintings raw, vivid stories of his life felt too exposed, like he'd hung his soul for strangers to dissect. There was the mural-inspired piece of New York's underbelly, the abstract of his mother's rejection, the streetlight scene with Ethan's silhouette. Each one was a risk, a truth he'd never shared so publicly. A critic from Artforum, a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper pen, lingered in front of the streetlight painting. "Bold use of shadow," she murmured to a colleague. "It's vulnerable, but controlled. This kid's got something." Jamie overheard, his heart leaping, but her next words cut deeper. "Let's see if he's a one-hit wonder." As the night wore on, Jamie's anxiety eased, replaced by a cautious hope. People were talking, pointing, nodding. A collector in a cashmere coat bought 2 pieces on the spot, whispering to Ethan about a fresh voice. Jamie caught snippets of praise, authentic, emotional, fearless, and it felt like breathing for the first time in years. Ethan found him near the end of the night, as the crowd thinned. "You're a hit," he said, his voice low, proud. "I knew you would be." Jamie's throat tightened. "I still don't get why you did this. You took a chance on me, and it's working. I don't know how to thank you." Ethan's eyes softened, but there was a flicker of something else, hesitation, maybe pain. "You don't owe me anything, Jamie. This was never about thanks. It's about you, what you're capable of." The words felt heavy, like they carried more than Ethan was saying. Jamie wanted to ask, to push past the walls Ethan kept up, but a guest interrupted, pulling Ethan away. Jamie watched him go, his chest aching with questions. Was this just mentorship? Patronage? Or was there something more, something neither of them could admit? After the show, Marcus dragged Jamie to a rooftop bar to celebrate. The city sparkled below, a sea of lights against the December chill. "You're famous now, babe," Marcus teased, clinking his glass against Jamie's. "Next stop, MoMA." Jamie laughed, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept replaying Ethan's words, his glances, the way their hands had brushed in the studio. He'd never felt this before, not with the fleeting hookups or crushes of his past. This was deeper, scarier, like standing on the edge of a cliff. "Earth to Jamie," Marcus said, snapping his fingers. "You're thinking about him, aren't you, Mr. Billionaire with the sad eyes?" Jamie sighed, caught. "Is it that obvious? Honey, you're practically glowing. But be careful. He's got baggage, and you've got enough of your own." Jamie nodded, but Marcus's warning only made him more curious. What was Ethan's baggage? The articles mentioned his wife's death, but nothing about his life now. Was he lonely, like Jamie had been? Was he even? Could he be interested in men? in Jamie. The next day, Ethan invited Jamie to his penthouse for a debrief. The apartment, perched above Central Park, was all clean lines and muted colors, more museum than home. Ethan poured coffee, his movements precise, but his eyes were tired, like he hadn't slept. The show was a success, Ethan said, handing Jamie a cup. You've got offers, galleries, commissions, even a teaching gig if you want it. You're on your way, Jamie. Jamie stared into his coffee, overwhelmed. This doesn't feel real. A month ago, I was broke, sleeping on Marcus's couch. Now, this, because of you. Ethan shook his head. Not because of me. Because of you. That night in the diner, you gave me something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. I've been running from it since Lily died. But you brought it back. Jamie's heart pounded. Ethan, what are we doing here? You're not just my patron. I feel. He stopped. The words too big. Too risky. Ethan set down his cup, his face unreadable. I don't know what we're doing, Jamie. I'm twice your age, and my life's a mess. But you make me want to be better. To feel again. The confession hung in the air, raw and fragile. Jamie stepped closer, his voice trembling. I'm scared too. But I can't stop thinking about you. Not just the money, the art you. For a moment, they stood frozen, inches apart, the city humming beyond the windows. Then Ethan reached out, his hand brushing Jamie's cheek, tentative, like he was afraid he'd break him. You deserve more than I can give, Ethan whispered. Jamie leaned into the touch, his eyes burning. Then give me what you can. The kiss was soft at first, hesitant, then desperate, years of loneliness pouring into it. Jamie felt like he was falling, but for once, he wasn't afraid. Ethan's hands were steady, grounding him, and the world outside faded away. When they pulled apart, Ethan's eyes were wet. I haven't done this since Lily, he said, his voice breaking. I don't know if I'm ready. Jamie took his hand, squeezing it. We don't have to know. Not yet. They sat together, watching the city. No promises made. No future certain. But for the first time, Jamie felt like he belonged not just in New York, but with someone who saw him, flaws and all. The road ahead was uncertain, but the warmth of Ethan's hand in his was enough for now. The weeks after the kiss were a whirlwind of art and emotion. Jamie's exhibition had sparked a fire his paintings sold. Critics raved, and galleries clamored for more. But the real fire burned between him and Ethan, a fragile, unspoken thing they nurtured in stolen moments. They met in the studio, at coffee shops, in the quiet of Ethan's penthouse, each encounter deepening their bond, though neither dared to name it love. Jamie threw himself into his work, painting with a boldness he'd never known. His new pieces were brighter, infused with the hope Ethan had sparked. But doubt lingered. Could he trust this happiness? Ethan was a billionaire with a past, and Jamie was still the kid who'd been rejected by everyone he'd ever loved. What if this was too good to last? Ethan, too, wrestled with ghosts. He'd opened up about Lily, her laugh, her fire, the way her death had shattered him. I thought I'd never feel again, he told Jamie one night, his voice raw. But you're waking me up. Jamie wanted to believe him, But Ethan's hesitatious moments of distance kept Jamie on edge. Was Ethan ready for this? Or was Jamie a fleeting escape from grief? One snowy evening, as they walked through Central Park, Jamie took a risk. "Ethan, what are we? I need to know where this is going." Ethan stopped, his breath visible in the cold. "I want you in my life, Jamie. But I'm not. I've never been with a man before. It's new, and I'm scared I'll hurt you." Jamie's heart ached, but he nodded. "I'm scared too. But I'd rather try and fail than not try at all." Ethan's smile was small, but real. "Then let's try." Their relationship grew, tentative but steady. Ethan attended Jamie's gallery meetings, offering quiet support, while Jamie pushed Ethan to reconnect with the world he'd abandoned. They laughed over late-night takeout, argued about art, and kissed under the city's lights, each moment a step toward something neither had expected. But the world wasn't done testing them. A tabloid caught wind of Ethan's return to public life, splashing photos of him and Jamie across gossip sites. Billionaire's new muse, a gay artist's rise to fame, read one headline, twisting their story into a scandal. Jamie's inbox flooded with hate slurs, threats, reminders of the rejection he'd faced coming out. Ethan, too, faced scrutiny, his board questioning his distraction with a young artist. One night, as they sat in Ethan's penthouse, Jamie broke. "I can't do this," he said, his voice shaking. "The world's tearing us apart, and I'm not strong enough." Ethan knelt before him, his eyes fierce. "You're stronger than you know. You gave a stranger a meal and changed his life. You faced a city that tried to break you and built something beautiful. We'll face this together." Jamie cried then, not from pain, but from the realization that he wasn't alone anymore. Ethan pulled him close, and they held each other, the city's noise a distant hum. The turning point came at Jamie's next exhibition, a year after their diner meeting. The gallery was packed, his new work bolder, brighter, a testament to his growth. Ethan stood by his side, no longer hiding, his presence a quiet declaration. Critics praised Jamie's evolution, but it was the final piece that silenced the room. A massive canvas of two figures under a streetlight, their hands touching, rain blurring the edges. It was them, Jamie and Ethan, their story laid bare. After the show, Ethan took Jamie's hand. "I'm proud of you," he said. "And I'm in this, Jamie. All the way." Jamie smiled, tears in his eyes. "Me too." They stepped into the night, the city alive around them. Jamie thought of that rainy diner, the $10 he'd spent, the stranger who'd become his everything. He'd offered a meal and found a future not just in art, but in love, in trust, in the courage to be himself. Ethan had given him a chance, but Jamie had given Ethan something too, a reason to live again. As they walked, hand in hand, Jamie knew the world would keep throwing challenges, hate, doubt, fear. But together, they were unstoppable. Two souls who'd found each other in the chaos of New York, proving that a single act of kindness could change everything.